So last week we had the festivities of Summer Games Fest, which is basically Christmas for gamers, an entire week of new game announcements, updates, and overall general celebration of our favorite hobby. And honestly, this year's event was fantastic. Like, looking at this list of games has me pumped for the upcoming year in gaming. There's tons of stuff on here that I just can't wait to dive into and talk more about, which I'll likely do in other videos in the coming weeks here. But man, hands down, without question, the number one most exciting thing for me on this list, it's friggin' Guild Wars 3, dude. Are you serious? I honestly can't believe it. I really can't believe it. I think MMOs might be saved. Now, we have known that ArenaNet had a new Guild Wars project in the works. This was revealed during investor calls last year, but from what we had heard, it was in the concepts of a plan phase. Like, someone just wrote Guild Wars 3 on a whiteboard and said, yeah, we should do that. Yeah, we should do that. I had zero expectation that we would be getting a full-blown announcement with in-engine footage this year. Now, sure, this isn't exactly how I expect the gameplay to look, no, but it is how things can look in the engine that they're working with, evidently. And other than, like, meme comparisons to, is this High Guard 2? I think it looks pretty good. Maybe sort of a plasticky feel. I hope they continue to work on it. But overall, it generally, I think, looks visually appealing. But yeah, dude, I had no expectation that we would be getting this game this year announced. I really did not. Let alone the fact that with the game's reveal, they also announced that they're going to be beta testing in the fall of 2027. So 15 months from now, like, man, again, honest to God, I don't think I was expecting to get to play Guild Wars 3, assuming it even existed before it was announced, until like 2030 at the earliest. So I am beyond surprised, but also incredibly excited. This is awesome. As I've mentioned over the years, Guild Wars 2 has remained one of my top 5 favorite MMOs. In fact, I'd probably even put it in the top 3, along with World of Warcraft and Elder Scrolls Online. They are the traditional MMORPGs that I've most consistently come back to over the years to check out updates. So having a new installment for one of my favorite games in my all-time favorite genres, once again, it's like Christmas for gamers. It's at least Christmas for me, I'll tell you that much. Hey there, Force from the future here. So after I'd already basically put this video together and we were about to publish it, I'd done a couple posts online, and also while I was live streaming, I kept getting questions like, how can you actually be excited about this? The genre is so cooked. Like, are we not still super pessimistic about every new MMO that gets announced, given how it's gone for so long? And this was my response to that. And this is my response to that. People were like, well, why are you excited for MMOs? They all suck. Listen. This is coming from ArenaNet, and ArenaNet is one of the few companies who did make an MMO that was successful, withstood the test of time, and that I still like playing today. So of all of the developers, this is one of the handful that I'll be like, yes, I am fully excited, leaning more positive than I am skeptical. Because Guild Wars 2 is fucking awesome. I still think it's a great game. WoW, ESO, and Guild Wars 2. These are the 3 bigger, like, traditional MMOs that I still come back to every single year. So if I'm going to be excited about anyone making a new MMO, it's going to be Blizzard, well, ArenaNet, and ZeniMax Online Studios. Unfortunately, Blizzard fucking refuses to make an MMORPG ever again. ZeniMax Online Studios spent 7 years making a new MMO, but Microsoft canceled it last year. And ArenaNet, they're taking a shot. So yeah, you bet your ass I'm excited, dude. You bet your ass I'm excited. All right, so what exactly do we know about Guild Wars 3 thus far? Well, we've got some basic information about what they're putting together. Some of this comes from the official website, Steam page, and press releases, and I will touch on those things, but really a lot of the good info came from an IGN interview where ArenaNet studio head Colin Johansson shared some details about the game. Now, one big important thing that they've discussed in several instances is the fact that Guild Wars 3 is going to be a fair bit different than Guild Wars 2. Now, it's of course sharing the same world, the same lore, and much of the same DNA, but enough will be different that you may still want to play both games.
We start with player problems, and we make MMORPGs, so we start by asking, what are all the player problems and frustrations in the genre at this time? And back when we were making Guild Wars 1, one of the big ones was that every online game had a subscription fee. So we set out to make a game that would have no subscription fees, that anyone could play as much or as little as they want, and they could always play with their friends. When we set out to make Guild Wars 2, We wanted to make a giant open world MMO, the scale of all these other games that were out at the time, and solve for the problems that existed in those types of games. And so we made a world where players don't get put in conflict with one another, where it's easy to play with other players, and other players actually make the game more fun. And starting with those player problems as our core means every one of our games is very, very different. They take place in Tyria, they draw from the same core lore, but they're on different timelines and they're very different game experiences because they solve for different problems in the era of game that we're making it in.
In fact, following the announcement, they also released a separate video talking about the future of Guild Wars as a franchise, all three of them. So they have got new updates and content planned for Guild Wars 1, some fairly big overhauls that will be coming to Guild Wars 2, and they also announced a planned commitment to continue yearly content updates for Guild Wars 2 even after Guild Wars 3 has released.
We wouldn't have got to this moment without the millions of players who've enjoyed Guild Wars and Guild Wars 2. And the entire team at ArenaNet is proud to share this moment with all of you. We'll have much more to share about Guild Wars 3 in the months ahead, but today, we're here to talk about the games you're already playing. I want you all to know our studio is committed to actively developing Guild Wars Reforged and Guild Wars 2 for many years to come. We are not replacing your favorite games. We'll be supporting them.
Their explanation for why they're doing this is basically just the fact that the games are different enough that they expect there will be people who want to play both or who prefer one over the other. Kind of like how there's people who prefer classic World of Warcraft to retail. Same thing's going to be for Guild Wars 1, 2, and 3, and they're going to continue supporting those games as a result. So yes, I guess the main point here is that Guild Wars 3 isn't just going to be Guild Wars 2 with prettier graphics. Expect some fairly big differences. First of which appears to be the combat. So, Guild Wars 2 has this hybrid tab target action combat system that sort of blends the old school MMO tab targeting with some more actiony elements. Well, for Guild Wars 3, they are fully committing to action with hopes of pushing what people expect out of the genre's combat forward.
And then the other one that we've talked just a tiny bit about, and I'm going to leave it at that today, is our combat system. And I think that MMOs often are viewed as very specific types of combat, and we really wanted to look at, especially with this game now coming to both console for the first time, and trying to create a new era of MMOs, we really wanted to ask, how could we take some of the elements that you would find in action multiplayer combat games, or even just action RPGs, and bring those into the MMO space and extend them? And so our combat system is really something very unique that extends out on some of those ideas as well. That's as much as I'm going to say right now.
And yeah, I am fully on board with this, frankly. I think for modern day MMOs especially, tab targeting is just too antiquated. Even though there are things about tab targeting that I really enjoy, like the sheer volume of potential skills that you can have, or the precise targeting of individual targets within large groups of people, there are things about tab target that I love. I mean, my favorite MMO is classic WoW after all, but I feel like the future of the genre is likely action-oriented. My hope really is that they can try to make sure it doesn't feel too spammy, where a lot of action combat games can kind of just especially if you're dealing with boss fights and large number of players, it just feels like a spam fest. I don't know how else to explain it. It feels less sort of input precise and rotation precise than it does in tab target MMOs like WoW. Not 100% of the time, but in a lot of cases. So I hope there's room for some skill expression, and it doesn't feel like every class is just a DPS class. Maybe they're going to lean more into a more Holy Trinity system if they are trying to separate themselves from Guild Wars 2. Again, we'll see what happens. Now, when describing the game, they say that we will master a combat system where depth is achieved through strategic skill use, positioning, and movement, where action RPG combat meets Guild Wars build making, creating a unique combat experience. That's pulled directly from their website. Now, beyond the 100% focus on action versus this hybrid thing, there's also going to be a bigger traversal focus. Now, traversal is still a big thing in Guild Wars 2 via the mount system at least, which gives players a lot of freedom and fun ways of moving through the environment. But it does seem like more of this will be player versus mount centric in Guild Wars 3. We have that example of a character wall running up the side of a mountain in the reveal trailer rather than having to use the Springer mount or the flying mount in Guild Wars 2.
The two things so far that we've set out as core pillars for the game that we've announced, one of them is joy of movement. I think one of the things that the Guild Wars franchise is known for, coming out of Guild Wars 2 in particular, is offering this really spectacular form of movement in an MMO experience. And we're really trying to push that even further with Guild Wars 3 and asking the question, can we take some of the elements that you would traditionally find in action games and bring those into multiplayer MMO experiences to create incredible new forms of joy of movement? And a lot of that is powered by momentum, which is a thing you don't see in MMOs. And so a lot of the movement in Guild Wars 3, your momentum transfers between all of the different things you do, which allows you to really express joy of movement in a unique way in an MMO.
So momentum is going to play a big role here, which is really exciting. You're going to have some method of picking up speed and then carrying that momentum, carrying that speed into other actions that you do for navigating this play space. And this kind of reminds me of how it works in Dune Awakening. So you can do like the grapple hook onto a ledge, and if your character clears that ledge, you take all of that grapple speed that you built up, and then you can use that with your grav belt to just soar through the sky, and it creates just like super fun traversal. That's one of the best parts about Dune Awakening is the traversal system with the grapple, the grav belt, and there's several other abilities that kind of play into this momentum-based moving through the landscape. So yeah, I would love to see that in more games, systems like that, momentum-based movements where you can carry momentum around. That sounds great. And they go on further on the website to talk about this, saying you can glide, ride, leap, and wall run across or is the place that we're playing in, with a one-of-a-kind movement system that transfers your momentum between modes of travel, providing a free-form joy of movement through a world alive with adventure. Awesome, sounds great. Fun movement in games with big worlds to explore just adds to the whole experience, so great, awesome. Also, interestingly, on the Guild Wars 3 website, they make mention of skill collection, which is really exciting. So this was a big thing in the first Guild Wars. As you played through the game, you would pick up skills, the vendors would sell them to you, and then those skills would be ones that you could use for your character. But most interestingly was how they did elite skills, that they actually required you to go out into the open world and take on some challenge, usually just some difficult boss fight, and then you could get that boss's skills and use them on your character. So I don't know, say you fought some necromancer who could summon a skeleton out in the world. If you wanted to summon that skeleton, you would have to, with a group of players, go kill the necromancer and then capture the summon skeleton ability, which then you could use it. And I think this is just an interesting way of just doing skills in MMOs. I think it's really cool. It's really well done. It's been a very long time since I played the first Guild Wars, and I don't have the clearest of memories of exactly how the system worked, but hell, I mean, maybe it's time for a revisit because it's a really interesting system just conceptually. If I want, there's a boss that leaps up in the air and does a big earthquake. I want that ability. Let's get a group, let's kill the boss, let's capture the ability. Now I can do the earthquake, So it's cool. Looks like skill capture is coming and making a return from Guild Wars 1 into Guild Wars 3. Now, in terms of the game's setting, I think something that's really interesting here is that this is going back in time. So as mentioned, it takes place in Or. That's like the play space, the world that we're going to be in. But it's over 1,200 years before the events of Guild Wars 1 and just before the very first Guild War broke out, and I guess before one of the gods was disposed. That's above my head.
And we see this as a really incredible opportunity to go back to a place in our world that there isn't a lot of written history about, but what there is incredibly interesting. And there are a huge amount of the mysteries and the stories behind the entire concept of Guild Wars all originate from this timeline.
So this place will be familiar for people who have enjoyed Guild Wars games, but there's so much unknown about this time period that it's going to let the developers do a lot of different things. And I also like the idea of going back in time to a more rooted, grounded fantasy setting, presumably with less of the future tech that we have in, say, Guild Wars 2. I don't really know for sure if that's the case, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, and I like this back in time approach instead of going from Guild Wars 2 forward or leaping ahead in time. I just like this. It sounds good. And speaking of differences between 1, 2, and 3, it does appear like the scale of the multiplayer might be smaller scale than what we see in Guild Wars 2. From a recent PC Gamer article, it does sound like Guild Wars 3 might be going more in the shared world direction versus the large scale hundreds of players on screen like you see in, say, Guild Wars 2 world bosses. So in this written article, we have this quote: "I can't reveal too much because Guild Wars 3 is still under development, but there is a directional difference. Aeon 2 focuses more on massive numbers of players like RVR, Realm vs. Realm, more users the more fun, whereas Guild Wars 3 is more about segments of small groups playing that makes the gameplay more fun. That's all I can say at the moment. Now, it's worth noting that this quote came from someone associated with with Aeon 2 and not Guild Wars 3, but because they're under the same umbrella company, I believe they just have knowledge of what Guild Wars 3 is making. The reason I add that caveat is this is not directly from ArenaNet or from someone working on Guild Wars 3, as far as I could tell from the article. So this may or may not actually be the case in terms of the scale and the scope of the multiplayer in the game. We'll have to see. Although I will add, like, it is cool to see the hundreds of players while you're fighting world bosses in Guild Wars 2, but it's not like a pivotal thing for me necessarily. We've talked about this a lot when it comes to, like, what is an MMO? Exactly how many players have to be on the screen for you to classify it as an MMO? Is it a shared world? Is it an MMO light? Where are the thresholds where you move from one genre definition to another? I don't really know. I guess really what's most important to me is that the world feels alive. I don't need to see 200 people rendered on my screen to feel like I'm in a living, breathing world. I just need to continuously see people around me while I'm exploring, and I need to not be broken of the immersion of that play space where players are vanishing and reappearing. Unless they're rogues going into stealth, I don't want that happening. I don't want to be phasing out of instances while I'm in the middle of, like, taking on a mini boss in the world with 2 other random people that I came across. I don't want that spell broken, you know what I mean? But, like, the exact threshold of the number of people that I can see at any given time, that's not really important to me. I want larger scale things, you know? I would like to see still maybe a big world versus world PvP like they do in Guild Wars 2, or like is done in ESO, or like was done in Dark Age of Camelot. But it doesn't have to be thousands of players. It doesn't even really have to be hundreds of players. But 50 to 100 in some of the bigger content in the game, I would personally still love that. Again, though, I'm not. This wasn't the Guild Wars developers. This wasn't ArenaNet that gave that quote. So it was just someone associated with the company that apparently knows about what they're building. I don't know though. We'll take or leave that section. But back to officially confirmed things. Monetization. It seems highly likely that they're going to be following probably exactly in the footsteps of what they've done with Guild Wars 2 here in this instance. At least they appear to be wanting to avoid subscriptions and battle passes.
I think there's become a modern version of the subscription that we've seen evolve over the last few years, and even longer than that, in battle passes and paid battle passes, where it's basically a subscription kind of hidden and wrapped with other stuff around it. And I think we've challenged ourselves to ask the same question: can we make a game like this that doesn't have a subscription fee and doesn't have a battle pass fee buried in it as well? Because we think players are sick of those two. And so this will be a game you can buy it, you can play it as much or as little as you want. We will respect our players' time, and if they love it, we'll have other stuff that they can buy from us in the future, but we're not going to hold their time hostage, and we want them to be able to go play other games.
Also, I don't think I mentioned this, but the game is going to be coming to both PC and console right from the start, and they've really emphasized wanting to make sure that the experience feels great on both platforms. And then the last thing that they've really tried to drive home about this game is that their main focus really, from a high level, is for Guild Wars 3 to try to breathe some fresh life into what they clearly see as a stagnated genre, which, of course, yes, all fans of MMOs will agree with that.
We feel like right now, the genre that we make our game in the MMO genre, and we've consistently heard this from all of you too, that you feel like this genre is ready for something new, that it is stagnated, that we've all been playing the same games for the most part for over a decade. And I think this is when ArenaNet's at its best, when we challenge ourselves and say, let's go solve for the problems and innovate. And it's risky, it's a challenging thing to do. We could trip and fall flat on our face by trying to invent new ideas and then wrap our game around those. But I don't think game genres move forward unless people are willing to do that. And so we are gonna fearlessly charge forward and try a bunch of new ideas. And we really hope people love them, and we're gonna find out over the next couple of years.
They go on to say in the press release, our goal for Guild Wars 3 is to push the MMORPG genre forward while upholding the values you will always find in a Guild Wars game. Design that is easy to get lost in for hours, but always respects your time and investment as a player, while creating a positive and supporting space to build community and share stories together. And I think that last line, those last 2 lines, really drive home what I've loved about Guild Wars 2. It is one of the MMOs I keep coming back to year after year. I think because it respects your time, because you carry over your progress, because they do that horizontal progression. Some people absolutely hate it. I don't. It's the reason I keep playing and keep coming back to Guild Wars 2. I still like MMOs with vertical progression. I still play classic WoW. I still jump in and check out retail. I still play ESO, although ESO is kind of like horizontal it's like a mix, because at one point you get to a gear level where you're pretty much good, but there's still higher tier gear that you could get, which I guess is kind of like how it works in Guild Wars 2. That's actually a question. Would we classify ESO as vertical or horizontal? Because for me, it's always kind of been but whatever. I'm not playing at Pinnacle content either, so what do I know? Either way, I am honestly over the moon. It's still early days. We don't know a lot. Pretty much don't know much of anything really about the game, but man, with how much I love Guild Wars 2, my expectations are indeed sky high. Even more so, I think, because the MMO genre has been in such a rough state in recent years, just in terms of new games coming out. All of the behemoths, they're still trucking along, they're still getting yearly updates, and that's great. I still play all of those games, Guild Wars 2 included, but getting new games in the genre, and ones that have a chance of sticking around, it's just been quite a while since that's really happened. And the fact that Guild Wars 2 is getting a sequel, and Guild Wars 2 is one of those MMOs that stuck around, that still gets yearly updates, and that I still play every year, them making the next thing, I can't wait, dude. MMOs are back, baby. Let's go. All right, I'm sure I'll cover this game more in the future. That's all for this video, though. Stay tuned. Let me know what you guys think. Are you excited for Guild Wars 3? Do you refuse to get excited about MMOs, which I wouldn't blame you ever again in the future? I'm pumped, man. I'm pumped. I'm going to jump back into Guild Wars 2 probably now this week just to get a nice refresher. I actually already jumped back in earlier this year, but I'll jump back in again. And maybe it's time I finally revisit Guild Wars 1, because I think getting refamiliarized with that skill capture system could be a lot of fun. Anywho, I'm going to stop rambling. I'll see you guys later. Thanks. Take it easy.